They hate when you elevate. You're stacking up losses, I'm handing them out, yeah, I had to go delegate. It feel like I'm floating, I'm lost in the moment, that's why I can levitate.
What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Mindset Cafe podcast. It's your boy, Devin, and today we got a guest for you. He's actually a good friend of mine, Paul Childers. He is the owner and founder of Blue Sky Biz Solutions,
Yes, sir.
and we're going to dive into,
Yes, sir.
we're going to dive into that and everything like that, and he's actually an entrepreneur in his first year of entrepreneurship, so diving into that mindset of what it's like to become an entrepreneur and, face that first year, especially because he's going through it and has just gone through it. So it's going to be an interesting episode. So, Paul, thank you so much for coming on today. How's everything going?
Hey, thanks for having me on, Devin. It's going good. Like I said, just coming out, first year was officially wrapped up March 10th of last month was my official first year date. So we are now 13 months in. So it's been good.
There we go. That's awesome. So before we get into it and everything, can you explain what you do at Blue Sky so the audience can get a little better understanding before we dive into the mindset?
Yeah, and it's kind of fun. I love when people ask me this because it's really kind of evolved and is still evolving as I kind of grasp better what I'm capable of, and I think other people that use me as a referral partner are starting to understand a little bit more of what I do. But the core of it is helping business owners, and specifically, I guess where my focus falls is, 7-figure business owners trying to scale without risking or putting their personal assets at stake by using loans and getting access to loans that either don't report to your personal credit or don't even require your personal credit to be used at all through building a good business credit history and strong comparable debt. So it's really just helping people scale with a little more peace of mind.
Okay. I mean, I have two questions off of that. First question being, what is business credit? Because I know there's a misunderstanding with new entrepreneurs when they get a quote unquote business credit card from a bank or something like that with their EIN number and stuff. But if you can elaborate like what you do and how you actually build business credit that's not tied to your personal credit.
Mm-hmm. That's a great question because you're right. There is a misconception, I think, with new business owners as to what it is. And there's a lot of advertisements that are out there that advertise business credit. But then when you click for the course or whatever, it's just credit card stacking, right? So it's just using credit cards. Business credit is built on your EIN number through a Duns and Bradstreet portal, right? So you've got to have your Duns and Bradstreet number in order to be able to build your business credit. It's completely separate of any kind of personal credit systems and methods. It doesn't actually require personal credit at all to be able to access. And that's not saying you don't have to have good personal credit. You should. But it really just relies on the entity itself to fund and get lending for things like vehicles. You can get credit cards, smaller equipment purchases, things like that. So at the core of it, it's basically just using your EIN as its own social security number to obtain, funding through it without having to put your personal credit information in at all.
No, it's interesting because I realized, after we talked, a while back and learning that, there's the business credit cards and then there was a whole different section if you go to like your bank, website that says corporate credit cards.
Yeah.
And that all of a sudden I was like, wait, now I get what you're saying because you can't even access those corporate credit cards or apply from without, doing something like you're saying with, getting a DUNS number and stuff like that. Second part to that initial start, why did you choose or why are you choosing to work with like 7-figure business owners versus like, 6-figure business owners? Is there a reason for that or is there a mindset for that?
I do work with some 6-figure ones that are, trying to scale as well. That 7-figure number, just from the year of working, the guys that are really trying to scale at that point that are maybe just crossing that $1 million line and then trying to get to that next, that $5 million line. Like I think we all, as entrepreneurs here, that 0 to $1 million is always the roughest. And those ones that get to the million, usually what has happened is they've either figured out how to bootstrap their way all the way up and don't have any kind of credit or lending history. So for them to get access to financing that is not in my opinion, predatory. They've kind of got to start from scratch. But then you got the other side of that of guys that just absolutely abused their personal credit while they were scaling to that point that are now trying to scale again, that just keep getting it turned down for loans or getting into bad loans because their personal credit is bad, their utilization's high, their revolving credit's super high. So like, it's just, that seems to be really that kind of trigger point for a lot of them to start untying all of this stuff, that they've just tied themselves to, or at least helping them understand how to build a good and healthy credit profile for their business and also for themselves. But that 7-figure mark just seems to be, they already experienced it fully and are really wanting to find options to be able to scale that at next level. And so that's kind of where that focus was. And I've come across some 6-figure guys that do that as well. And I have resources for those that are just starting to. So.
Okay, no, that's awesome. I mean, it definitely makes sense because, I mean, once you are able to hit that 7-figure mark, the scaling game is a little bit different, but also you can get to 7 figures, like you're saying, bootstrapping it and, basically grinding through it, but it's not always the smartest one. And so, I mean, dealing with people that are already at that stage that have made the mistakes and learned and are ready to really grow, I mean, it does make sense. So how's your first year of business been going? Like what did you do before, this?
Yeah.
Let's start there.
So prior to doing this, and kind of where I got my start into understanding commercial lending and the business credit world and separation of the two, was in automotive, where I was a general sales manager, finance manager. We did some fleet and commercial deals at the dealership level. And that's really where I got my exposure to this different world of lending, because you couldn't get in and apply for commercial lines for your business at Ally, GM, at that point in time, Wells Fargo, Huntington, unless you had a business credit score that would allow you to get access to that portal. So I was in automotive for a while. And I'm still passionate about automotive. I love cars. The hours were terrible, and you have 2 small kids, and it just didn't work. So then I took a job with a agricultural tire company called NTS Tire Supply, where I was a sales director with them for about a year and 3 months, and enjoyed it, but my heart wasn't there. I think I knew at that point in time that I was already destined for something different. And so it was really hard for me to feel really connected when I was also, I think, running from what I was supposed to be doing for probably several years before I identified it. So we parted amicably in February of 23. And then in March of 23, I opened up my company and started doing the business credit. And then I slowly added in lending and then added in some consulting. So it's been a really wild first year. Made some bad partnership choices initially that I got out of, fortunately, pretty easily. November is really when I hit the ground just on my own, everything in house. So, and it's been going really good since.
What was that mindset shift or that like perception change when all of a sudden you realize, okay, I'm in November, I'm doing this all by myself. There is no one else to either lean on or necessarily put the blame on if things aren't going that way. Like, did you have like any, did you have to focus on changing your mindset or your view on what you're doing?
No, it's actually, when you ask that question, I think, I was thinking back. My wife and I were kind of talking about this the other day. I was thinking back to when I got into car sales. No sales background ever, nothing, right? I'd worked hourly up until that point. And I enjoyed selling cars, even if it was for somebody else, because at the end of the day, if I didn't hit my sales number, it was just my own fault, right? Like I just didn't put the work in. I didn't do the right things. Couldn't blame another company for, pricing the product too high or whatever, right? So it was almost a weight off of my shoulders when I decided to bring it all in-house, because then I got control, I guess you could say, of everything that was going on, the quality, how the customers were being taken care of, what the price points were going to be for the customers. And I'm able to really cater that towards the people that I'm looking to serve. And so for me, it actually was almost like a giant weight of anxiety off of my back and my mind when I was able to do that.
Okay. I mean, that makes sense. I mean, coming from something like car sales or a sales job that is, heavily like commission based, and you don't really have anyone to blame but yourself if you don't make that sale. I completely get it. With with being an entrepreneur now, and especially being on your own, I know I met you, in the RBO mastermind. So obviously that's one of the answers to the question. But what else? What other things are you doing to continue your personal development and your development as an entrepreneur?
Yeah. That aspect of things for me has been focusing on reading some books, but good books. And I'm not looking at content. Like I initially set off this year, I was like, I'm going to read 52 books. Then I reshifted and I was like, no, I'm going to read probably half that, but I'm going to read them 2 or 3 times and take things away from them each time that I can put into place and practice. And I'm actually reading Alex Hormozi's $100 million leads again. And I'm starting to incorporate some of the funnel strategies that he had to actually start doing some paid advertising finally, because everything else has been organic. But the other piece of it for me is spending money on myself that I've never probably spent in my life to get to, either mastermind events or like networking events, and getting around, different thinking people that maybe aren't even in my industry, but just, I really love learning how others look at and build their business. And the cool part about that for me anyway is it just gives me insight into all the unique ways that people think and do things. And it makes it easier for me then to turn around and kind of build my business, realizing that your business really is just at the end of the day an extension of yourself. So like how do you make that extension of yourself something that you can replicate and scale and keep your core values and so like watching other people do that at a high level is really fascinating to me, and it's a great opportunity just to meet new people. And sometimes people at those events or on calls like what we've had see things that you're doing and make suggestions that kind of can like just push your mindset outside of like, oh, I didn't even think about offering something like that. Like I'm going to apply that and see how it works. So that's kind of my intention anytime I do reading a book or going to these events is like, what are 5 things minimum that I can bring back from this that I can apply to my business and keep driving the needle forward for myself is really the way I use that stuff.
Well, that's awesome. That's a awesome way to look at it. Rewinding real quick, you said you're reading, the $100 million leads. Have you read Russell Brunson's books at all?
I have not read any of Russell's books yet, but they are going to be next on the list with how much I'm getting from these. So,
So the crazy thing, the reason I bring that up is because we met in a mastermind, right? And I read Russell's books first. I think he has 4 out now, but I read 3 of them. And so I've read those, and I've actually read them twice, and that's where I learned to build funnels and learn like the different sales processes. Like when we talked about building the ladder and all that kind of stuff, it all pretty much stemmed from like the lessons in Russell's book. And then when I read Alex's book, the way it was structured and the way it was written, I was like, man, this reminds me a lot of Russell Brunson's books, like the QR codes and talking about acquisition.com and all that kind of stuff. And then I came to learn that Alex Hormozi was in Russell Brunson's mastermind.
Sure.
And that's how he actually got his start. And not knowing that until I heard an interview of him talking about it, it really shows the importance of like investing in yourself. Like he was in the top tier. I don't think Russell does it anymore, but he was in the top tier of Russell's masterminds. And Alex basically wasn't doing funnels or anything like that. He just heard that you need to invest in yourself and get around higher level people, And so being a part of that mastermind, all of a sudden led to him launching Gym Launch, and then learning about funnels and doing all the other stuff. And that's where his first public speaking stage was. So the importance of masterminds and the importance of networking really is demonstrated right there through someone that you're reading right now. And I mean, he's huge, and I've read both of his books too, and the guy just thinks different.
Yep.
So I mean, that's awesome, the way you're looking at masterminds and the way you're looking at implementing new things when you come back. I mean, that's huge right there. And that's where I think a lot of people, because since our last conversation, because for the audience, like we've me and Paul have talked before this, and just seeing the stuff that you're doing now and how your business is scaling and everything like that, like you're not just learning stuff and then being like, okay, that's cool information. I could do this and I could do that. Like you're actually doing and you're separating yourself from the crowd because you're actually implementing the things that are you're learning.
Yeah.
Right. And that's where there's that disconnect. Have you seen that disconnect in others that, with the business owners that you're dealing with?
Yeah. I think you're always going to have integrators and, visionaries. And I think sometimes what happens is people get so tied up in these like titles, right? Like, if you do EOS or whatever, you're either an integrator or a visionary. And I'm sitting here going, well, you need to be both. If you're a business owner, you need to figure out how to be both. And I think,
Sorry to cut you off. Can you explain that for, someone that doesn't know what
yeah,
integrator or visionary is?
yeah, visionary is basically your person that typically like a CEO or president director of the company that has big visions and like looks at the 30,000 foot view out into the future. Like, what are we going to do? Where's this company going to go? What other new product lines are we going to go into? What new things can we do? How can we continue to scale and grow and be healthy? And your integrator is somebody that takes those things and puts them to work and puts teams in place and puts processes in place to make sure that the entire machine works well, right? So, like, I guess to really simplify it to layman terms, visionaries would be like the drafting engineers that draft up the entire blueprint. Integrators are the guys that actually build it. And you need to have both. But what a lot of business owners fail to understand, especially when they're solopreneurs or self-employed. I like self-employed because it just reminds you that you still work for yourself, right? Like when you're self-employed, you don't have anybody else really to work with you. And where I see a lot of those business owner types fail is that they just get hung up on like, oh, well, I can't do that. Well, it's like, you better figure out how to do it, because unless you can pay somebody to do it, you're kind of screwed if you don't learn some of these things. Or you better find things that you're really, really good at doing. Like me, I hate cold calling. I didn't like cold calling in car sales. I don't like cold calling now. So like for me, I had to figure out a really good way to get leads that were warm that I could just talk to and reach out to, or through like referral partners. Right. So like, so it's figuring out how to take some of that stuff and implement it. And what happens at a lot of these networking events, at least from what I've seen, and even some of these business owners that I work with, is they're just taking so much information in all the time that they only are able to react and not ever plan and process the information and go, okay, I learned this. Here's how I can implement this into my business. Forget the other 50 things that I learned. I'm just going to get really good at these 1 to 3 things right now. And then I'll go back and figure out how to do these others. What happens is they either try to implement all of them and they just burn themselves out, or they just go because they like the dopamine hit that you get of talking about it and, going, oh, I'm going to do this. Oh, I'm going to go do that. I'm going to do this. And then you like go to do it and you're just like, oh, this sucks. I don't want to do this. So it just takes the mindset of like, and I think, like you said, I think that's why so many business owners fail early on, is when they realize that it's just you. Like initially it is just you, and you have to figure out how to make this little machine work and bring income in. And if you are like me and just decided to burn the boats and go all in on a business, that can be a real stressful time period of learning, because you're like, man, I'm drowning a lot and I'm learning all these things, trying to build a boat while I'm drowning. And some people just aren't able to do that. And so they just like the thought of building a boat, but they never built the boat.
No, I agree 100%. And myself, like you, when we opened the gym and everything, we burned the boats and went full in, but it was almost, that's the only way we could do it for our business. And so I agree that some people like the thought of it. Some people will burn the boats and go for it. Some people can't deal with that much stress, because you do take on a ton of stress. And then other people, will start building their business while they have an employed, job, and then transition. But I do agree with what you're saying. I think it's almost like an information like overload with an implementation like underload, and so that's where that disconnect. And it's not that, you can't grow a business or it's impossible. It is difficult. And I want to go into what you said before we, hopped on today, in what what the misconception is of being an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
right? Especially in that first year.
I think it's glamorized a lot. You see a lot of influencers talking about the entrepreneur life, and you see a lot of people that are doing advertisements and stuff for, oh, if you follow me and do my coaching program, you'll have this, this, and this, or taking pictures in front of rented, exotic cars and all this stuff. And Trevor, the thing I like about, Real Business Owners Group and Trevor especially is he really, really reiterates and hits home like entrepreneurship is a really lonely road if you don't surround yourself with like-minded people, because regardless of how good your friends are and how close you are with your family, if they're not entrepreneurs, they will never understand what it is you're going through and why you're putting yourself through it. And even to that point, like your spouse probably won't understand why you decide to do this life and put yourself through this suffering, because as you're going through it 100% sucks. I mean, there's nothing worse than telling your kids that you can't afford stuff for Christmas. You're trying to figure out how to pay your mortgage. You're behind on car payments. You got credit card debt that you put yourself into to, keep this business alive. And it takes a lot of resolve and I think stupidity sometimes to, keep forging ahead when you're dealing with that stuff. But that first year, unless you've done it before, I was a sales director for a large company. We scaled from 16 million to 34 million. I've run crews, I've run teams, I've helped scale. I've been a GM and a GSM at a dealership that went from 30 cars to over 100 cars a month. Like, I've done these things at somebody else's business. When it's your own business and you have to do everything, it is a very humbling experience, first and foremost, in my opinion. And it is also a very stressful time because you're like, I need to learn all these things or I'm not going to be able to make these payments. And then that stuff just kind of compounds itself, especially if you make a bad decision, like, bad partnership or joining up with the wrong, company to be sending certain contracts and stuff through. Like, it can really, really compress that and make it even worse. But your first year, and I think entrepreneurship in general, it's just way over glamorized. At the end of the day, I would say the vast majority of this last year, everything sucked. And it wasn't fun at all, but you have to have a firm, large picture in your brain as to what you want to do. Steve Gamlin was really great during that time because he helped me get a visual board up so I could just see every day, like, this is what I'm building for. So like those weeks and those months when I separated from the company that I had partnered with in October, I had no income because I was going through some legal stuff. So I had literally an entire month of no income and still had to make my bills and stuff. So thanks, Mom, for helping me out with some of that. But, not everybody has that luxury. But you got to figure out how to get through it. And if you don't have a firm visual of where you're going and why you're going there, you won't make it through those times. And everybody's going to go through those times. I don't give a crap what anybody says. You will go through a period of, man, this really sucks. I don't know why I'm doing this. And it might be a stretch of time, but that is the truth of running a business. And I'm guessing that happens even at levels where you've expanded and are continuing to expand as well.
100%. I mean, with us launching the franchise, you hit that road again. Like, so it happened with the gym. It happened, when we launched the franchise. I mean, it keeps going, right? But it's one of those things where the ups and the high points wouldn't feel as good if there weren't those low points, right? Mm-hmm. Like, it would, like, you wouldn't value sunshine if there wasn't rain, quote 50 Cent, right? So, but it's so true. I mean, honestly, like, I agree. Entrepreneurship, it's not for the faint of heart. It's not for everyone. And for the people that are selling the courses and stuff and saying that you should be an entrepreneur, or for the people that think that everyone should be an entrepreneur, that's just not true, right? You have to have the mental fortitude to be able to battle your own self, negative talk and your self-doubting beliefs, let alone your circle. I mean, like you said, your spouse, your kids, like your family, your friends, like, you have to surround yourself with like-minded people. And I mean, that's why I've been a part of other masterminds in the past. And honestly, I just really connected with, real business owners and the people in that one. And it lets you know you're not alone. Like, the struggles that you're going through, everyone goes through it at 6 figures, 7 figures, 8 figures, even 9 figures, you hit new battles, right? And those progressions are times for you to learn and grow, because you at the 6-figure mark can't face 7-figure problems yet. Like, you haven't learned the skills to get there. But that's why you're overcoming those down phases, so that the next down phase at 7 figures you can face. You've already built up those tools. With you being a father of 2 and having a wife and like you said, like a mortgage and everything like that, what are some of those things that you have been facing, with launching your business? I mean, kind of relating to what you were just talking, like how has your support system at home been?
Yeah, I will say this. I have been very fortunate with my wife. We got married. I would say I always tell her, I tease her, that she married me at my worst. I was overweight. I wasn't real motivated at that time in life when we met. And apparently I'm aging like a fine wine at this point in time, So, but she's truly a ride or die, and she doesn't have. And what's unique about her is, everybody's like, oh, you got to have a strong, powerful wife beside you that's wanting to build an empire with you. And I'm like, she doesn't want to build the empire. She wants to run the empire behind the scenes, right? Like, make sure everybody's taken care of, manage the house, make sure the kids are getting their stuff done, eventually be able to just manage and watch over the grandkids. But she's super supportive of me building this for us. And, sometimes that support is just in the fact that back last year when I told her, I was like, I don't think I'm going to go back to work for anybody else. She just kind of looked at me and she's like, okay, like, you do whatever you feel like you need to. Like, I know you're going to make it work. Just that she believes in me, that I'm going to jump into something and do it and be successful. I think that's been the biggest support system that I have, is knowing that even through those times where I'm like, hey, we don't have any money, she's like, that's okay. You're going to figure it out. Like, we'll be fine. We just won't do these things right now. And number one, that motivates the crap out of you as a husband, to make sure that you don't have to hear those things out of your wife's mouth or your kid's mouth again. But number two is it just reminds us, that, when we got married, we had really nothing. Right. And now we still have nothing in a sense, but we're building towards a better life where we can travel and we can do the things that we both want to do with the kids. And so that support has been great. My mom's been super supportive as well, even though she doesn't have any clue what, always what I do, right? After my dad passed away 3 years ago, she's just kind of been there and been super helpful, and knowing that, hey, this is what you're supposed to be doing. You're following like your path, like you're helping people. And so that's been nice as well. So like, I haven't had any like that at home family or like close family adversity that I hear from some of these people. And that aspect of things, I think, makes it that much harder for business owners if they don't have supportive families, which, makes it even more important to find other business owners like yourself to get around, because toxic family that would drain the crap out of me beyond anything else. Like, if my wife wasn't supportive of what I was doing and it was a constant battle with her, I wouldn't be here. I would have probably gave up and just been like, screw this, it's not worth it. So like, how do you get around that stuff is getting around people that can help you work through some of those problems, because they've been through them themselves as they built up their businesses. But if you don't get out and get around those people, you just kind of get stuck in these echo chambers. So all things considered, I've been very blessed and fortunate to have the support that I have had and the family backing that I have. Honestly, my biggest struggle has been getting rid of I'm just going to call it addiction to comfort and having a comfortable life where like everything was there and taken care of. Like, just getting away from that life, being uncomfortable with things and getting comfortable just creating out of nothing has probably been honestly my biggest issue that I've faced. But I know that's not the case for everybody. So.
No, I mean, that's awesome that you have that support. I mean, I had a similar support system. I'm sorry about your loss. I actually lost my mom 3 years ago too. It's a crazy coincidence and an unfortunate coincidence.
It is.
But like my wife as well, she doesn't really know exactly what's going on with the business, but same style support system that you have. And she was actually the one that was like, hey, you know, you talk about building that boat. Like, are you going to, if you're going to do it, do it. Like, let's go, kind of thing. So I think that, it's not that you need to find a spouse that wants to build the empire with you, necessarily like be in the business, know what the business is doing, but finding a spouse that wants to build an empire lifestyle with you and allowing you to do the things that you can do to build the empire, and then them support you so that you can build that empire, right? Because if you have someone that's just nagging you or telling you that you need to get a regular job and all those things that you're not going to be happy with, that again, like you said, is going to add so much extra stress and burn you out. And being an entrepreneur already burns you out most days, especially in the beginning. So, you got to make sure you do have that support system. If you don't, then, you definitely need to join, a mastermind style group or some kind of networking group to align yourself with them.
Yep.
I mean, I have a daughter that's 2 years old, but you have, two kids, one 11 and 6. Have they kind of showed any interest, or do they understand at all like what you're doing with running your own business or anything like that? Maybe the 11-year-old more so.
My 11-year-old's starting to ask more questions. I don't think they know exactly what the world is going to be opening up to us here. Like what I do, obviously, like, I can, as you're a business owner, you can kind of start seeing the signs of like, man, I'm really close to getting onto something like pretty big here that's going to change the trajectory of my lineage significantly. But your kids, all they see is like the days where you're just like, they come home and you're on the couch burnt out because you just had like 3 calls that just did not go the way you wanted them to. And so you're kind of frustrated and grumpy, and they're like, why do you keep doing this? My little guy is always like, well, he's like, Dad, he's like, we had money and now we're poor. Why did you decide to be poor? I'm like, it's not what I decided, dude. Like, I just always tell him, I'm like, we're just not there yet. Right. Like we're building towards it, So I think for them, just seeing me jump off and kind of run and control things myself, and for the reasons why I want to do that, and the fact that I try to honor those reasons, like, be at their sporting events, be here after school when they get home to, be able to get dinner ready for everybody, and just kind of help out around the house some more when I can, and kind of enjoy the moments that I didn't really get to enjoy when I was in the automotive industry when my kids were really young. I missed a lot of those little firsts and stuff. So I just wanted to make sure I was there for the second and third. So, so they see that, and they see the effort I'm putting in, to learn, and just the physical side of things as well with, losing weight, exercising more, getting up earlier, eating better to take care of myself, because it's a grind mentally, physically, and spiritually. And if you're not filling those cups, you're just gonna end up on a couch taking naps all the time.
No, definitely. No, I think that you're setting important examples, for them right now. I mean, they're still young enough where they don't fully understand. I mean, like your 6-year-old was, asking questions, like kids are, straightforward, but it's one of those things where, when they do hit, teenager age, and they do see you running your own business and stuff like that, and then knowing that you built it, it's one of those things where you're kind of showing them that they can do whatever they want to do, and that, don't let anyone, tell them otherwise, kind of thing. So you're leading by example versus just telling them, which I think is going to have so much impact on them. And I mean, like yourself, one of the main things for me, like one of my purposes behind the business and stuff, is so that, again, I can be at, my kids', events and stuff like that, because being a solopreneur, you can't necessarily do it, or being in something that, like the car sales or something that you're tied to the business, like that's the only way you're going to make money. You do have to make that sacrifice. And not saying that it's bad, but it's just one of those things where the days that you are burnt out on the couch, like that's what gets you on that next phone call, right? What do you do? What techniques or what tools do you use to basically push through and make that next phone call? Or when you're feeling burnt out, what do you tend to do?
I had a really good manager in automotive that taught me the value of self-care. So if, that's really where I learned to kind of really just take an assessment of where I'm at that day and go, is it worth me pushing through because I'm already irritated and annoyed with everything? And so is it worth pushing through the rest of the day? Or do I just need to take the half day off or whatever and just go do some project around the house or go do something that I enjoy doing for the afternoon, and then we start again tomorrow, right? Like, it's okay to lose a battle here and there as long as you keep winning the war and keep moving forward, right? Like, not that entrepreneurship is similar to war, but kind of it is. Internally, you are always at war with your inner voice and that inner guy that wants to just quit and give up, and sometimes it's okay to just throw a bone that way and just do it because your body needs it, your mind needs it, you need to reset, So like, I have had stretches where it was just a bad day. My kids got home and I was like, hey, man, it's nice out. Let's just go. Let's go for a bike ride. Let's go play outside. Let's go do something. I just, kicked everything down the road. But if it's like, early in the morning, I have a couple of bad calls. Usually what I do is I just go walk away. I go for a walk if I can, or I'll go just do whatever else for a little bit. And then I'll come back and it's like, all right, we'll start with one call. I'm not going to do a fresh sales call. I'm going to do a follow-up call with a customer that's already a client and just have a good conversation with that and just get those good vibes going. Because I think sometimes we always are like, those sales calls were bad, I'm going to dive right back into a sales call. When really, dive back in and have a conversation with somebody that already likes you and just get those positive vibes going and get yourself into a good mindset and then jump into that sales call, right? And so that's helped me a ton, even in car business. Like, call the people that like you, because they're going to cheer you up. They're going to pump you up, and then go tackle the harder stuff.
It's like almost like breaking the momentum streak.
Yeah.
Like if you have three bad sales calls or calls that didn't go, a certain way, it's not okay. Yeah, you could go into the fourth, but now it does take a drain on you, mentally and emotionally. So then you're going into that next one like, oh fuck, here we go again. Like hope they answer, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's important, like you said, go for a walk if you can, or just switch up the task, like you said. Like if you can't go for a walk, let's say you're at, you're selling cars, call a follow up, switch up the call sequence, right? Break that cycle. If you need to do two calls that are follow ups, get you in that reframing, that positive mindset, so that you shift back into the next sales call on a high note versus just going lower and lower, because then it's going to be a lot harder to get you out of it for the rest of the day.
Yep.
How is your scheduling? How have you been with scheduling, like with your family, and do you set time aside for them? How has that been? I know like launching a business could be strenuous on that aspect, but have you found something that works for you?
Yeah, it's always, I try not to change it too much, but it's all about working in. Jacob Stoller has brought this up a couple times in some of our groups. I don't know if you know him or not, but he really simplifies things into a way of like, write your day out. Like, what's your ideal day, right? Like, what is your perfect day? And there are a lot of other variations of this, but he's like, if your schedule conflicts at all with how your ideal day is supposed to go, change stuff. Like, make it work. And he's like, we overthink things so much where we're like, I can't do this or I'm not going to get sales. And Andrew Wilson says the same thing. Drewby is like, when you shift your schedule around to fit you, guess what? The customers don't know any different. They're just going to reach out when they schedule on your calendar for whatever day you have available because they want to work with you. And that's just going to fit in and flow the way that you want to. So the sooner you learn that it is okay to protect your time, especially with your family, and block out certain times for the customers to be interacting and stuff with you, it makes your life easier. And so once I kind of understood that and got really detailed with how my schedule works and looks, and it changes a little bit day to day, but for the most part, it's the same. Then it's just teaching yourself that it's okay to put that customer off. It's time for your family and kids. It's okay to not respond to that Facebook message. It's okay to not go on that post. Like, it'll be there tomorrow. That message will be there in the morning. Like, certain stuff like that it's okay to leave that stuff on the table, to have that time with your family. Just like it's okay then sometimes when you have to do stuff a little bit longer and have a little bit more interaction with the customer after hours because that's what they need. So it's a balance, but I don't think there really is a work-life balance. It's an energy balance, right? Like, is the energy that you're putting into your family matching what you're putting into your business? If not, then you're probably getting drained one way or another, and you need to figure out how to maintain that.
No, and I completely agree. I'm glad you have, realized that and stuff too, because before I ask you the next question, I'll let you kind of ponder it, while I say this piece. But the next question that we're going to go into is basically like that one piece of advice that you would, leave for an aspiring entrepreneur, or for someone that's going through their first year of business, right? But before going to that, I think it's important that people always think of work-life balance as you have to spend this amount of time in the business, this amount of time with your family, and it's not ever going to be an equal equation, right? There's going to be days that you're stuck at the office all day long, and then there's going to be days that you can just do a half a day, a quarter of a day. You got a couple of important meetings, but you want to spend the time with the family. Like, as long as you're filling your cup in both aspects, and your family is basically feeling like you're paying attention to them, and you're not building this, and then all of a sudden you build it, and then they're like, yeah, we haven't seen you at all. It's one of those things where when you can find that balance, and however it works with your schedule, that's how you do it. So each person's different, but like you said, schedule out your day that fits you. Do the big things first, the important things first on your calendar, and then fill it. Like, sales calls will take up your whole day if you let it.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, fill the important meetings, or fill the time with your family on your calendar first. Sales calls go in between, or the little tasks go in between, because that will fill up the rest of the day, right?
Yeah.
So the way, I read it in a book called Traction. Basically, you put your boulders in a jar first, then you put your stones, right? Because the stones are going to fill the cracks within the boulders, and then you fill it with the sand, which fills in the boulders and the stones, and basically fills that jar.
Mm-hmm.
But if you fill it with the sand first, there's not going to be any room for the stones, let alone the boulders.
Yep. Yeah. And that's
Right.
100% accurate. 100% accurate.
And I mean, believe me, I've learned the hard way. I've done it, like, especially starting a business, everyone does it. And then you have to have that realization of, oh man, I'm doing it right now. I'm just filling up with sand, and I'm not getting to do any of these other things. So what's that one piece of advice? Like, let's say your website, your social media, your business, everything, hypothetically is gone, but you were allowed to leave one message for an aspiring entrepreneur or someone that's in their first year of business. What would that message be?
That's actually a really tough one, because I think it's different for everybody. But I think the simplest aspect is just embrace the suck. Like, build a vision for yourself that is, and this probably started for me years before, watching other people build their dreams, and before I started building mine. But I think mine started to get built probably 4 or 5 years ago, when I started to just kind of go, why am I working for other people and building their dreams when I should be working on and doing mine? I just didn't know what I should do. Right. So, have a dream and a vision so big that you can't afford to work for others, and then embrace the suck that it's going to take to get it up off the ground and running. And just trust yourself. At the end of the day, that's all you can do. You have only yourself to trust to make the right decisions. You can't sit there and second guess yourself. You can, but then that's a waste of day. But just trust yourself, trust your vision, trust your purpose. But also don't be afraid to pivot if something doesn't feel right. I made a major pivot in my business, and I'm fine, right? It's not going to kill you. It's not going to be a deal breaker. Dealing with a bad partner, dealing with a bad contract, whatever, you'll survive. You'll move on, as long as that vision and that purpose is big, and you just trust yourself. That really, I think, is probably the biggest thing. You just trust yourself.
No, that's huge. That's awesome. Well, where can people connect with you? If they're looking to get more information on, if they run a 7-figure business or a high 6-figure business, and they're looking into, business credit, and or looking to stray away from their personal credit and bootstrapping it.
Yeah. My Facebook page is just Paul Childers. I do everything on my professional digital page, whatever you want to call it. LinkedIn, also just Paul Childers. And then my Instagram is PA Childers. Those are my three main ones. I'm working on getting some YouTube videos and stuff up, but Facebook definitely is the biggest one. Otherwise, you can check my website out, www.blueskybizsolutions.com.
Well, that's awesome. I'll put it in the show notes for everyone. Make sure you guys share the show, leave a review, share with a friend, that's running a business that they may benefit from, using Paul and, at least, connecting with him and getting the knowledge that he has. He's crazy knowledgeable in business and in, getting business lending. So, make sure you guys share it with a friend, leave that review. Paul, thank you so much for, taking the time out of your day, from your sales calls and everything like that to hop on the Mindset Cafe today.
Yeah, man, thanks for having me. I really appreciate that.
We'll definitely connect soon.
Sounds good.